Hello and welcome back to the Still Getting Ready podcast with your host, me, Rudy Berry. Thank you so much for being back this week. I had the best time doing the podcast last week and also had an amazing response to the first episode. So thank you so much for being here, for being there, listening, and a little piece of housekeeping, as the official podcasters say. We are now on Apple Podcasts, which, what you doing over there, girl? I'm a Spotify person. I have been my whole life. Literally, I have been since it came out. I was a college rep for Spotify. So we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, and obviously we're here on YouTube as well if you are watching this episode. We're going to start each episode by talking about last week's leftovers. So kind of giving you an update on the things we talked about last week, really rapid fire, just in case you have not been in the cultural zeitgeist and you feel like things are unfinished. Starting with Mount Everest. Okay, we talked about Mount Everest in my Live, Laugh, Love section of the last video. The season is basically over. There was a total of 5 deaths throughout the entire season. So many people summited, you guys. It's absolutely insane. If you have any interest in Mount Everest at all, you know that this season was absolutely incredible. And I already can't wait for next year. So really kind of like a not super interesting season in terms of like drama, but very successful season for a lot of climbers. Also wanted to mention that James Charles has released yet another apology video. This will be his count 'em 1, 2, 3 third apology video about the Spirit Airlines situation. The first one was his real thoughts. The second one was a more realistic apology. And the third one is him trying to save his arse. Okay, so he is starting a foundation to help people who want to work in creative fields and industries who don't necessarily have the money to be able to do so. And he's pledging $250,000. The thing about it is, you guys, like, he is going to do and say whatever it is he has to do and say to continue to do this job as an influencer and not have to get a real job in the real world. Really think about that, percolate on that. He is willing to do or say anything to keep the job he has. So I'm sure it will work because it's worked every other time that he's ever been in a scandal. But, you know, it reminded me of when Tana Mojo got in trouble during COVID for, I think, like having a party. And she started a foundation with her manager and literally it never went anywhere. So we'll check back in on that in a couple of years and see if he's actually done anything. And last but not least, we talked about Olivia Jade's brand, O Piccola, and it has actually come into some drama itself recently. If you know Gloria on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, anything, she is an amazing makeup creator and very vocal advocate for Black people, dark skin tones in makeup, inclusivity, and really talking about the history of why people are so often excluded and showcasing brands that are very, very popular and how they still are not able to accommodate darker skin tones. And she went ahead and swatched the deepest shade of the O Piccola bronzer, and it is straight up ashy on her skin. And that's a discussion for a whole other day of why people feel they need to leave deeper skin tones out in their initial launches and then add them in later. I'll never understand it, but that is essentially what's happening. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I will share Gloria's videos in the description of the podcast so you guys can go follow her over there. She makes incredible content. Today's main topic was inspired by something that also happens to be happening in the beauty industry right now. And not every week am I going to have something super topical to talk about, but it happens to be that like back-to-back weeks, there were things involving the influencer and beauty industry that were making headline news that I really wanted to talk about. And today we're going to be talking about the intellectual property and monetization of beauty trends. We'll be asking the question of who really owns a beauty trend. Is it the person who created the trend, the person who popularized the trend, or the person who has monetized off the trend? Is it inevitable that anything popular on the internet will be monetized, which, spoiler alert, the answer is yes? And what happens to the people who are left behind and the people who take it and run? And you probably already know that we are touching on the Patrick Ta and Painted by Esther situation that's happening online. I'm going to give a quick background story of this, but again, this video is not necessarily meant to be a think piece on the actual situation, but more of a conversation about the entirety of it. I think the Patrick Ta thing is a symptom of a bigger issue. So I'm going to start with the launch of the products that Patrick has made and work backwards. Patrick Ta is obviously a huge makeup artist and beauty brand founder, known for his blushes particularly. He has double pan blushes. One side is a cream, one side is a powder. And he recently launched something called the Transition Blush line, where he is putting out liquid transition blushes and powder transition blushes. The word transition is so funny in the beauty industry because I think about the early days of watching Jaclyn Hill and watching Nikki Tutorials and Manny MUA talking about a transition shade in your eye. If you remember when you're doing an eye look and you needed to go from a lighter shade towards the inner part of your eye to your deeper shade on the outer eye, and you needed that transition shade, which was typically like a warm brown. So the idea of transitioning between two shades in your makeup is not new at all, which we'll talk about. The two different products that he released are meant to help connect your concealer with your blush. So instead of just having the strong stripe of blush and then your bright under eye, it helps connect it with a similar tone shade that happens to be lighter to give sort of like a watercolor, beautiful blended effect that also blends into your bronzer. This is a way to highlight a technique through products. And very quickly, people began to realize that he was crediting himself with creating this technique. I will put in a little clip here so you can see from his TikTok where it says, I created this technique.
Created a 3-step blush technique to give you flawless blush every single time.
To claim the creation of a technique in 2026 is pretty bold because we've seen a lot at this point. Things come and go, things are popularized, but Patrick Ta most certainly did not create this technique, which then leads to who did create this technique, or rather who popularized this technique. And that is where the makeup artist Painted by Esther comes into play into this situation. She is a Black makeup artist from the UK known to do the makeup of SZA, Doechii, Naomi Campbell, Olandria from Love Island. Beautiful Black women who prefer to have their makeup done by other Black women because they understand the artistry and how to care for that deep skin tone. Esther went completely viral with her transition blush technique that she used on Olandria for the Love Island USA reunion show. This is most certainly her signature style. The way that she does her blush is what has set her apart from other makeup artists and has put her on the map and made her viral on social media. She has taught this technique to people on social media for free using products that you would already have in your makeup collection, including pink powders, lighter blushes, deeper blushes, cream blushes, powder blushes, different brushes, different ways to use your brushes, powder puffs, and sponges. She is showing it all to you and for free. So coming back to today when Patrick Ta released these products, everyone was tagging Esther in the ads. Everyone was tagging Esther on his page. Everyone was wondering where the credit was for Esther, and she did respond. She created a video that was incredibly classy, essentially saying she has never claimed that she created this technique, which going back to like what I said earlier, she says, I'm 29, these techniques have been around for years and years and years, and we'll talk about that because there is a history to, this technique itself, but she says, I've never claimed that I created this technique, but it is something that made me popular and also brought the actual technique itself into popularity. That really wasn't something that many of us were spending time doing before Esther. I started seeing a lot of fellow creators, especially Black creators, doing that transitional blush technique after Esther popularized it. The one thing that was incredibly interesting in Esther's video, besides it being incredibly classy and very kind to Patrick Ta, was that she said that Patrick Ta's partner actually booked a session with her and asked to record the makeup session. Patrick Ta does have a business partner. I'm sorry if I butchered the name. It's Rima Minyasin, and that is very weird. That is shady behavior. That is essentially saying, you know what, I'm going to just go straight to the source and see how she does it and then turn it into a launch. Obviously, Esther denied this request. She thought it was incredibly strange, and it is, especially knowing that this was probably going to happen and people were going to compare your product and your technique to Esther's. To go and try and book a session with her and film it is incredibly strange across the board, considering she also has so much free information online about how she does this technique. Very odd, very weird. The transition blush line launched shortly after, and this goes from coincidence to intentional research and strange behavior from a very large brand. So like I said, Patrick Ta claims he created the technique. They try and book a session with Esther to film her. And the nail in the coffin for me in this situation is that Patrick Ta trademarked the term transition so that only he can own this new vertical of products that he's creating, essentially creating an entire new area of beauty, which is the tiny little portion of your face between your eye and your cheek. He will probably make millions of dollars off of that tiny little portion between our eye and our cheek. And he has trademarked it so that he is the only one who can do so at this time. That means that if Esther did want to create her own makeup line at some point, she would have to be incredibly creative about the naming rights, knowing that he's basically said, move it or lose it, this is mine now. Obviously, all of this got back to Patrick, and I want to read for you word for word what his response was. I think it's interesting because this is actually the caption of a TikTok that he made promoting the blushes. So he actually hasn't said anything on camera about it, only in the caption. And here's what it says. I started working on Transition Blush 1.5 years ago. I wanted to create a product that was specifically made for this blush look. I do not own this look. And then he tags her account at Painted by Esther. She is amazing and so talented. She popularized this look through her work and through Olandria. I have been doing this blush look since 2021. Not the same as Esther, but my own version. I am a makeup artist. For context, I filmed this video on March 5th. I have nothing but love and respect for Esther. When I first read it, I think it's generally a pretty gracious response. I think he's trying to say, look, I'm trying to do something different from her here. But at the end of the day, it's not different. It's not different. And saying that he is doing his own version, but then saying he created the technique, something just doesn't jive with me there. But here's the thing. Who else do you need to really tag in that video and start to give them their flowers? Does it go back all the way to Kevin Aquan? Yeah, it does. Kevin Aquan, who was a very legendary MUA who died in 2002, is one of the most original and inspiring makeup artists out there. He has a very, very thorough makeup book with tons of techniques in them. And in that book, you will find a different way that things are worded, but essentially how to do a transition blush. He actually had a transition blush product in his line. I think it may still be available that goes from a light shade to a deep shade and it has a gradient effect on it. The difference is that Patrick Ta is saying that his powder is actually super light and more like a setting powder than it is a blush. So it is a little bit different in that way. But the point being, this is not new to anyone, but it is being brought back up as if not only is it a new technique that Patrick created, but that he's making the first products around it as well, which is also not true. Nobody trademarked it back then. Nobody owned the name. It was simply just a technique and a way to apply your blush. The technique is decades old. What's new is the popularization of it on social media, the name, the product, and the trademark. But going back to what I said earlier, I don't necessarily think that Patrick Ta, outside of the few things that I mentioned that are a little squirrely, particularly booking to see Esther and also trademarking the name, I don't think that Patrick Ta is necessarily the villain here. I think that he is a symptom of the system and the beauty industry and really capitalism as a whole, if we're really going to get down into it. The race to create beauty products to market is rewarded over and over again, not original ideas. Original ideas are great, but they are worthless to the beauty economy, quote unquote, until they have been turned into a physical piece of makeup. Patrick Ta was the first to see the trend and say, I want to turn this into its own vertical and I want to own it. But if it wasn't Patrick Ta, it would have been someone else. It probably would have been another larger Sephora brand, and then eventually this will trickle down to the drugstore. I could see someone like NYX Cosmetics deciding to launch transition blushes in the next year because that's what happens. If you watched The Devil Wears Prada, you know exactly what I'm talking about in the cerulean blue. This color of cerulean blue was chosen by us for you. That's what this is. By the time it makes it through to the drugstore, the people who work at Sephora and make the orders for Patrick Ta to go on the shelf, the people who invest in these larger companies, LVMH, Estee Lauder, Puig, they are choosing these products to be the things that you decide, that you think you're making a decision to wear, but it's all been laid out for you. And I mean, there are endless examples of trends coming and going and being monetized with the original creator of the trend being absolutely left behind. It can even go as deep as full groups of people who have created a trend that are then made fun of and or discriminated against for the way that they do their makeup, or their beauty and then taken and put on a white person, and then suddenly it's a trend. For example, the clean girl aesthetic, the slick back hair, the bun, the deep lip liner, and the big hoops. We all remember when Hailey Bieber wore that recently. Well, it must have been 2 or 3 years ago. And yet, when we were all a little bit younger, Latino women were wearing that and using that as their staple in their beauty routine to express themselves. And suddenly it's cool and interesting and clean girl and not a Latina look. And then what came from the clean girl aesthetic being popularized? Just about 100 new brands of everything you can think of to celebrate this new girl. And on a very, very small scale, I understand what it feels like to have your ideas stolen from you. Obviously, I have a few products with a brand called Buble, and my freckle pen has been duped 10 to 15 times at this point, and it sucks. It really sucks to see your work continue to be taken with absolutely no reference to your work or that it was you who helped popularize the product. It does suck, but at a certain point, I began to realize that is capitalism, and that is just what happens. People want to make money, and when they see that something becomes popular, they will find a way to make it accessible to the people that they think are buying their products, whoever that may be, whether that's a small indie brand or a large brand. I've been duped by both. I've been duped by other creator-led brands, which really sucks. That one sucks the most. And I've been duped by giant companies like Zara. But every time I go back to this video that my friend Tony Bravo made, I'll put a little bit of it in here so that you can really understand why I love it so much.
If all they have to offer and bring to the table is a regurgitated idea of mine, all you're doing for me is affirming that my only competition has only ever been and will always be myself.
But essentially what really stuck with me from that video was when you are the person who is creative and making these original ideas, you will always have that. You will always have more to give, more to create, because your knowledge is like a well. You know, the way that you create things and your originality is a well. Your water well doesn't run dry just because someone has bottled your water. Does that make sense? They can only sell so many bottles of your water, but your well will always be wet. You will always have water in your well if you are someone who loves to be creative and original. No matter who continues to take from your well, the secret sauce will always truly be yours forever. And that's what I want to tell Esther in this situation is what she's done is so beautiful, and the way that she has created a technique specifically that works so beautifully on dark skin when it feels like every trend and technique is created for light-skinned women. It's beautiful, and she should be so incredibly proud of that. And I hope that she does do something with this. You know, I hope that this lights a fire under her to create her own makeup line. I think that she could probably do it better because, like I said, when you're the one who has all of the originality and the ideas, you'll never run out of that. And so I'm certain she could do it better. And that's not to say that the Patrick Ta products aren't good. I don't know. I haven't tried them yet. I am on their PR list. I am interested in trying them, but there's just so much nuance to this conversation that I feel like I would have to basically post this podcast along with my review. But if I do get it by the time I record my next episode, I will let you guys know in our updates next week. I'm really curious to know your guys' thoughts on this situation, whether you agree with me that it was inevitably going to happen one way or the other, or if you feel like it's more important that the originator of the trend is the one who makes money off of the product. Obviously, that would be the best case scenario, but it's very uncommon for that to happen. And one thing that I've been percolating on while thinking about all of this and like I said, the monetization of trends is really who's to say, and most likely this is true, that there isn't a makeup artist in a small town right now in Oklahoma who has been doing the transition blush technique for decades and decades. There are so many creatives and makeup artists and artists in general in the world that it's really just so impossible to say that I created a technique, because there are a lot of artists out there who are not on social media and just do day-to-day bookings. And there is probably a woman or a man out there who has been doing this for years and is looking at this and going, yeah, I do that too. You know, do they deserve their name on it? I don't know. Let me know what you think. All right, let's get into our Live, Laugh, Love segment. And I decided that I'm going to add loathe at the end because who am I if not a person who likes to complain? And like I said last week, our love segment is always going to be some sort of beauty product. And I'm going to try and make it something different than what I would put on my channel. This week, I am absolutely living for my kid starting to eat food. Oh my gosh. So Raleigh's going to be 7 months old in literally just a few days. And I'm equally devastated and excited by that. Being a mother is like having and holding two completely separate emotions. One that is devastatedly sad that your child is growing up and that you can't hold on to them for longer than they're able to. And the other one is, I love this new version of this kid. He's so fun and so interesting and he makes me so happy. It's like that 24 hours a day. But what's making me live right now is that we are starting new foods. Okay, he is loving avocados, loving bananas, loving his little crackers, loving cottage cheese. And it's just so fun to see him sitting in his high chair, eating food with us for dinner, and he's starting to drink water out of a straw. And I'm just constantly in awe, thinking like, how do you know how to do that? Like, there are things that come second nature to human beings, and it's just so beautiful and interesting to see that process happening in real time. Like seeing a kid that was completely useless and a lump on a log to sitting up and putting a spoon in his mouth. I'm mind blown by it, and just the littlest things that he does are the biggest celebrations in my life. Like bigger than anything I've ever done is watching him grow and learn. And this past month, it has just been so fun and beautiful. Like I literally want to cry thinking about it. So we need to move on. My laugh. I performed an improv show this month for the first time in a while. Okay, so if you don't know, if you're new to my podcast or to my page, I do improvised comedy. I've been doing it for a couple years. It's actually one of the reasons why I decided to not have a kid as soon as Reed wanted to, because I started doing improv and it was like, something clicked in me that this was something that I needed to invest my time in. And I did, and I absolutely love it. And I'm in a group, and we just performed our last show together. It was a year-long group. I had the absolute best time, and it just reminded me of how important it is for me to invest in things that are just for me, and how improv and comedy itself is so special to my heart. So if you didn't know, my job before I started influencing, if you will, I was a concert promoter and I worked largely in stand-up comedy. So I would tour with different stand-up comedians. I would help book their shows across the country, all that stuff. So comedy has always been a huge part of my life, and my dream as a kid was to be on SNL. Obviously, that's a pipe dream. However, I am mutuals with Veronica, who is now on SNL, and a lot of people say our comedy is similar, so Lorne Michaels, hit me up. I'll move to New York just for the season, just for you. I had so much fun in my show. I was laughing till I cried. And it was just so great to flex that muscle again and be like, oh yeah, this is something you love to do, that only you do, that you have invested literally years of your time in doing, that's not connected to being a mother, not connected to being a wife, not connected to being a beauty creator. Like, this is my own little thing. And so I'm really happy to sort of start to be back in the community, because I took such a long time off from being pregnant and early postpartum. But making people laugh and laughing on stage is just the best feeling in the world. And so if I can also bring a little bit of that to this podcast, I absolutely will. Once we get some topics that aren't so damn serious, I just feel like I had to talk about these things these past 2 weeks just because it's been like so topical and so top of mind. But don't worry, I'll be around to make you laugh, laugh, laugh. My love this week. Sometimes brands will send out PR packages for products that already exist because they either want to push sales in that direction or they feel like it fits with the current season that we're in, etc. And that's what happened with this perfume from the brand Lore. This is in the scent Sublimity. Sublimity. Okay, it's impossible to say. Such a gorgeous scent. So I actually got this in their original launch and I liked it, but I didn't love it. And that was, I think, when I was maybe early pregnancy or sometime around then. And I've been told many times that being pregnant and postpartum can actually affect your nose, the way you smell things, the way that you interpret things. And so I've kind of given myself a little bit of a break from the older scents that I thought I liked or didn't like when I was pregnant, and I have revisited them, including this one. And I am obsessed. I have been wearing this every single day since I got it back out. First, I'm going to read you the description of this perfume. It's presented as a sheer solar-leaning musk with a creamy tropical nuance. It opens with coconut nectar and ylang-ylang, moves through a gentle sea salt facet alongside sandalwood, and settles into a soft sun-warmed skin impression. It wears like a light musky woody floral with coastal inflections. And wow, that is a great description of this product. When you look at the notes itself, you really can't see any of that creaminess in here outside of the coconut nectar. But in saying that it is a creamy tropical nuance, literally, I've been wearing this around the house and Rita and I just say, wow, it's a creamy, beachy dream. This is a creamy, beachy dream. I would classify this as a beachy skin scent, similar in vein to beach skin from Fleur, but less overtly beachy and more just really soft. I'm outside. I live near the beach. I don't know how else to explain it. It's really, really strong on the coconut nectar, the cream, and the sea salt. It absolutely dries down to the most beautiful skin musk, but this scent is perfect for hot days, for hot nights like spring and summer. If you are a beach lover, but you don't like sunscreen scents, which is me, I cannot stand a scent that typically has a coconut note in it and starts to smell like a sunscreen. It's not for me, which is why I have such a hard time with finding really good summer scents that aren't just straight up fruity, and this is one of them. If you want something unique and beautiful, and the bottle itself is absolutely stunning, check this out. They have 4 scents right now. I'm really curious to see if they will expand, which I'm sure they will, but they are very intentional about everything they do, and I really like it. Here's my loathe for the week, okay? Having dry skin. I'm sorry if I ever downplayed how horrible it is to have dry skin to dry-skinned people. When I had oily skin, which was pretty much my entire life, I was under the impression that dry-skinned people had it easy, okay? My skin was so oily growing up and through my early 20s that I would have to go to the bathroom at my office and blot my skin with the toilet seat thing maybe every hour, which also turns out makes your skin oilier because you're constantly removing the oil, therefore it makes more. I didn't know that, so I lived with incredibly oily skin for years. I hated it. I felt like I couldn't wear cream products. I felt like my makeup just washed right off my face. The thing with oily skin is there are things you can do to help combat it. And typically when you put on your makeup, it looks pretty good. When you have dry skin, your makeup looks bad from the jump. Okay, since breastfeeding, my body and face skin has been drier than I've ever experienced, and I genuinely don't know what I'm doing. It's like starting all over in my beauty world and being like, okay, well, all the foundations that I used to like for my combo oily skin don't work for me anymore. Everything I do now needs to be a cream or a liquid, and even still, when I put it on, my face looks bad. Like, it is insane. The minute I start my makeup, I'm already like, well, I'm at a deficit because I know it's going to look bad. It feels like it's impossible to get my face to look good unless I'm wearing no makeup. It's just horrible. So if that is you and you have been dealing with chronically dry skin your whole life, this is my formal apology. And I am claiming for all to say dry skin is harder and worse than oily skin. I said it. If you have tips, genuinely, let me know. I think what it is that I'm not prepping my skin enough, because back in the day, I would do my skincare routine downstairs in my sink. I'd come upstairs, I might do a little something, like a little spray on my face before I went in with my foundation, and it would be fine. It's not enough now. I think I need to do a whole ass secondary skincare routine up here with lotions and potions to get my skin ready for my foundation, which sucks. It's going to take me so much longer to do my makeup. And not only that, but my eczema is on its way back. It's actually under my teat right now. Yes, it's under my left nipple. So breastfeeding's been super fun. Yeah. Before we go, let me know what you think about this as another segment in the video. I was kind of thinking that on my broadcast channel on my Instagram, you guys could submit questions that you want answered about your life, about my products, about the industry, whatever it may be, and I will take a few minutes at the end of each video to answer your questions. It could literally be an advice column, but I just want to make sure that I'm actively listening to you and making sure that there are things within the podcast that you're interested in. So I'll probably ask that on my broadcast channel this next week. It is at the Rudi Berry on Instagram, and my broadcast channel name is The Berry Patch. You can find it on my profile. Happy episode 2. I love you guys so much. Don't forget, we're all still getting ready, and I will see you in the next episode next week. Bye.